Hello and welcome to Season 4! Let's see if I can get everything working right. Not talking about lists yet. Let me turn down the music. Hope it's not too loud for you guys. It's a little loud for me. But how's it going? Welcome to everyone that's in the chat. Just want to say what's up. It's been a while since doing like a event recap like this, and I miss it. I miss just streaming and getting to chat. We did a teaser as to what models were commissioned. Actually, I've been getting a bunch of updates. This is talking about our Beast of Chaos army that's being commissioned. Been getting a bunch of updates every week from our painter, Neil, who's doing the painting of the Beast of Chaos army. So I have a bit of a backlog to show you guys. And yeah, maybe at the end of the stream, we'll look quickly through some of the photos he sent. But I will post like a short 1 minute story update again at some point. Probably when we hit I guess in the next little bit. I think when we hit around 60% of the goal, that'll let us finish like almost 2,000 points worth or just over 2,000 points worth. So that's what we're working towards right now. And then obviously we want a little more flexibility to start off with. I mean, I probably have like 5,000 points of Beast of Chaos stuff. But we're trying to aim for like 2,500 to 3,000 points with this first commission, just so we can get it on the table and have a little flexibility. Hello again, guys. But yeah, thank you for joining tonight. Going to be looking back at LVO and everything involved with it. It was a wild weekend. If you haven't been before, this was my first year. Missed it last year when I was supposed to go, but it was a blast. Such an awesome community we have in AOS. So that's the first thing you gotta say. Everyone there was amazing. Everyone I talked to, everyone else, from what I heard, had similar experiences of just everybody was there to have fun and play awesome games, and a lot of great opponents, and get to meet so many people. Bear, what's up? Got to meet a lot of other content creators and that as well, and people in the community. It's one of the most fun things for me, especially going to places like here. This was down in Nevada, so an area where you get a lot of California people or places I don't normally play. So to meet a lot of people from those areas. So I always love it and appreciate the kind words talking about the channel and all that. LVO was the final send-off of probably the last event with the last previous GHB. So old season, but rolling, like I said, big send-off, and then from here on out, rolling into the new season. Dartron, yeah, buddy, I'll be at X Planet this weekend, so I'll see you there. Got a little 4-round 1-dayer at the local game store this weekend, so yeah. If you do have any questions, as always, don't hesitate to throw them out. As a quick overview of LVO, it was a 345 player event, so the biggest Age of Sigmar event to date in the world, which is pretty cool. It was fun to be at. Huge range of armies, obviously, with that many players, so many possibilities of what you might run into. And yeah, I guess to talk over it from like a place perspective, because I could literally talk for 2 hours about how awesome the community is down there and all the people that I met and ran into and got to hang out with, which is really the main part of this. So we talked a lot about the games and tactics and all that stuff, but the main part is just obviously going to events to have fun with your friends, and there was a lot of that. But look, talking about like LVO's mission pack, it was pretty standard. I should pull up the list of missions while we go. I'll recognize them as I have some photos to pull up. But the mission pack was pretty standard, nothing too wild in terms of missions. They were all well known or shared well in advance, so everybody knew what to plan for mission pack wise. I'm a big fan of that. I think that's like mandatory for like good smooth events where you want everybody to like enjoy their time there. I know, we've had other events that have do like random mission packs, and that is not fun, in my experience, because you have a lot of people running into the event and not knowing, what to prepare for, and then they get like the worst possible mission, aka the one where you can't teleport if you're Sylvaneth, or what is it, the one with 4 objectives across the middle that you get extra points for killing GVs. I forget what that one was called, but we'll talk about that one a little bit. But yeah, so mission pack was all known. Nothing crazy outliers in terms of the rules. The only thing I think worth noting, like that was like an exception or something different for me playing at LVO that I haven't run into before, was the terrain rules, or terrain, the mission pack or the tournament pack as it related to terrain, which is apparently pretty standard down there on the West Coast in California. But the standard 8 pieces of terrain, the terrain was fairly similar table to table, so like no complaints at all in any of those regards. And actually the structure of how terrain was placed, there were actually terrain maps, so every mission you walk up to the table, you pull up the pack either on your phone or if you have it printed, and you and your opponent actually only one of you sets up the terrain, and there are 2 pieces on every table that are meant to be impassable pieces of terrain, so you can't land on them with any models, whether they fly or not, but you can fly over them. There are 2 pieces of terrain that are meant to be garrisonable, which are also, as a byproduct, impassable, and then 2 pieces that are wildwoods, and then your normal like mysterious terrain rules on top of that. So when you get to the table, as I said, one of the players sets up all the terrain, so you agree which pieces are which type, and then you roll for attacker defender. Whoever chooses defender, because in this case everybody wanted to be defender rather than attacker, which is, unless you're tying somebody for drops. The defender sets up all the terrain, rolls out the mysterious terrain dice and places them wherever, and then the attacker chooses sides. I love it in concept, and I think goal and intention of it was fantastic, and I guess there were a lot of positives it brought. So with there being the pre-made terrain maps, the players weren't choosing where the terrain went necessarily, because the 8 spots for the terrain were predetermined. But the player who chose defender was choosing which terrain piece went where. So they get to choose where the impassable ones go. They get to choose where the garrisonable ones go. They get to choose where the wild ones go. So that might not sound like a big deal, but I actually thought that was, and the consensus from those I talked to was that just their roll off to see who dropped first or choose attacker or defender was actually insanely powerful. Think about being, a foot slaughtering army like Fire Slayers or, Nurgle Demons or something, where your opponent, like a lot of the terrain pieces were big. So there was like big rectangle ones that were often the impassable ones that were like 4 inches wide by like 12 to 16 inches long. So these big long pieces, and those would be the impassable ones. And if you're the defender, based on the terrain map, there were some missions where you could just plop that right in front of your opponent's territory. Actually, let me pull up a picture here as an example. So this is a terrain map. You can see how big. You can't see my cursor. Let me fix that. Capture cursor. There we go. So you can see like how big these would be the impassable ones here. So I think I had defender on this first one, and I set them up kind of out of like not too egregiously. So we got, mirrored the table. So we got our impassable, there's garrisonable, and then wildwood, and vice versa on the other side, and then like usually one little random one. So this I think is all fine. Here's an example of, so this is my table 2. So this one, so my opponent was Sylvaneth. All my opponents were fantastic. I'll get into that as I get into the games. But my opponent chose to be defender, so he could set up terrain. And you can see these 2 long and impassable pieces were used to split the objectives. I'm, for the most part, a foot slaughtering army, or I'm like, I don't have fly besides Archaon, and I'm low unit count, so spreading a unit across objectives is very favorable to me, or being able to move from one objective to the other pretty quickly would normally be like very important to me. But being that my opponent had a lot of teleportation, he decided to split the battlefield and split the objectives with these massive pieces of terrain. So if I had like something like my Chosen here, I can't just move across and charge this next objective. To go all the way around. So it's like, in certain situations, it's probably not the majority. Hey John, how's it going? Great to see you in the chat. So this is an example where it's like, you could use the terrain very favorably. And I don't by any means blame John for this at all. This is just the rule set that was in the tournament pack is promoted this kind of using the terrain or deploying the terrain favorably, which I don't think was the intention of the pack, to give the players that much control. So I would love to see maybe the terrain maps include where the impassable ones go and whatnot. And see, actually, so this is my game 4 against Caleb. Also, I think I won the choice to choose attacker defender in my round 1, but then lost it all the rest of the games. So here, this is on the 1 objective 1. You can see, so Caleb, my opponent, got to choose where the terrain goes. Similarly, he decided to split the board. Now this is Realmstone Cache, so the objective split. He has fast moving units, he has teleports, he has summons. So he decided to split the battlefield, so it was hard for me to move laterally to other objectives. Now, like, in the end, it wasn't the end of the world in either of those circumstances. But looking at this mission, for example, if I had been choosing defender or been able to choose defender, I would have taken, so we got the 2 impassable ones here, Garrisonable off in the corners. And then the Wildwoods kind of here. So nothing really impeding the board at all. Where I would have been, against, in this matchup, I might have been more likely to put the impassable ones here, across the middle of our deployment zones, because I have a little bit more speed. And I want to, try and force Caleb's army to split up, or his screens, to have to move around terrain, and he can't castle as well. And, well, again, might not have been the end of the world here if I had played something like Fire Slayers, or again, a slow-moving foot slaughtering army. Having an impassable terrain piece right in front of your deployment could literally be game losing. So again, just maybe a little more impact was weighted on like the ability, like the dice roll to win attacker or defender and set up the terrain favorably for yourself. So I'm sure there's, I think the easiest solution in my mind, I do like the predetermined maps. It's something I'm going to integrate into my own events, Season War GT this year. I like that, but I think I would again be like, okay, this is where the impassable goes, this is where the garrisonable goes, this is where the wildwood goes. Put that on the map, and then it's literally just the players setting it up as the map determines. Defender rolls out the mysterious terrain, chooses where they go, attacker chooses sides. I think that takes way less impact from the defender role of setting up terrain, and leaves it a bit more balanced. So cool to see. John agrees that the terrain map, exactly the same idea. So John, the awesome Sylvaneth player I played round 2, kind of feels similarly that might have been a little too strong. So that's my little spiel about terrain rules. In the grand scheme of like the tournament pack, it was a fairly minor thing. It could have, it didn't cause any of my games. It didn't dictate the outcome of any of my games necessarily, but there are situations where I definitely think it could have and may have for other people in other games. So, just want to kind of talk about it and some of the pros and cons that I felt there were. Yeah. Could have set the train in between rounds and issue resolved. TO setting terrain. It's in principle, yes, but you got to think there's 340 players. That's 170 tables. Very tough in between rounds to like go around to every table and properly set the terrain. So that's where I liked the maps. I like that idea. But I think there just needed to be a little more structure. Yeah, that's a good point, John. Talked about that towards the end. Wish I had photos of that game. Be fun to talk about. But so that's that. I'm gonna pull up my list. So I was playing Slaves to Darkness. Let me see if I can pull up another little camera. Oh, that's not a little camera. It's not the one I meant at all. Let's see. We just want to pull a side camera. There we go. Just so I can leave this small. Still talk. Cool. So I played Slaves to Darkness. Didn't notice already from the video title, I took Slaves. A little bit of an outlier for me. This was realistically my first real event playing Slaves to Darkness, and my 6th through 10th games with Slaves. But as a premise, leading up to LVO, Deepkin has been my main army this year, so they were definitely on my mind in terms of armies I was deciding between. I actually, those 2 Fire Slayers games I played on the channel made me like super Fire Slayers curious to like have fun and run something like that. But I guess the main point, decision point for me was with Deepkin. I was leading the ITC rankings for Deepkin and wanted to achieve that for the season. And John Anderson, a buddy of mine who I actually talked to a ton but met down at LVO for the first time, and he got best Lumineth, best in faction for Lumineth this year. Anyways, he was my competition for Deepkin, and we both like kind of weren't really feeling like playing Deepkin, or what we're curious to play other armies down at LVO. So knowing that we weren't both competing for that, it freed me up to not have to play Ideneth defensively just to hold on to that, my lead. And so leading up to it, I was like, okay, actually I was thinking maybe Daughters of Cain, because I was thinking of maybe playing Daughters of Cain next season. Same with Sylvaneth. And then Fire Slayers, like I said, had been a little, I've been having fun with, but I've been painting up Slaves to the Darkness a ton, and that's an army I'm super excited about as well. I've been playing games here and there, been again painting up so many models for the last while for the channel. Just last week you saw the first Slaves game with most of the stuff that I've painted. I think it was all stuff that I've recently painted actually. No, not the Verandar, because those were bot painted. But I ended up just settling on Slaves because I realized while painting, I'm just so excited about these guys because of all the hobby I'm doing on them. And I thought, hey, why not try and bring Slaves to LVO? I was lending Ridge my 12 Verandar that I own. So I was like, okay, I have Archaon without using the Verandard. How can I build a Slaves to Darkness list that I enjoy and that is fun? I then looked at it. I'm like, okay, Archaon fits. I can fit 10 Chosen. I can fit 10 Knights. I can fit Corvus Cabal to fulfill my 3 battle line. Going and host the Everchosen, and I can fit a Chaos Sorcerer Lord. So this is like, outside of Archaon, this is like, many of the big staples, and just barely fits in and coming in at 2,000 points on the dot. As soon as I kind of was like list building and seeing what I could make work, I figured that, like, found this list and was like, this could be it. Decided to try it like 2 weeks before LVO at an RTT, and had 4 games with it that were honestly, like, maybe it's coming from so many years of like Tzeentch and Lumineth and even Deepkin where you're castling, and just a lot of armies recently I've been playing a ton where it's like you're playing in your head as much as you're playing on the table. So jumping into something like Slaves, it was very freeing in terms of, okay, it's not magic, it's a bit more of a hammer than like a castle build. So it was a lot of fun. Basically, that event was going to decide if I wanted to take Slaves or I was going to take Daughters, I think was kind of my fallback. But again, I had tons of fun with the list at the event. It, performed better than I expected it to. So that gave me the confidence. Those were my first 4 games, my first 4 games with Slaves in this new battle. Maybe there's other games, but first 4 games in the recent couple weeks, in person at least, rather than TTS. So gave me the confidence, as I said, to go down and take it to LVO. So I guess just to go through the list and talk about some of the tech in it. There's some obvious things. So first off, host the Everchosen is a great sub-faction. I had to do it here if I wanted to run the Chosen because it makes Chosen battle line. If to include all these big pieces that I wanted to. So I had to host the Everchosen. It's also a great sub-faction for both the Chosen and the Knights because it lets them rally on 5-ups. Then for general, Chaos Sorcerer Lord is an auto take in Slaves to Darkness. You're going to see at least 1 to 2 in almost every army. Competitively, the best lists are definitely going to include 1 to 2, in my opinion. So Chaos Sorcerer Lord, Master of Magic, no surprise there. Arcane Tome for 2 casts with the draw on power Heroic Action in Slaves. Means the Chaos Sorcerer Lord has 2 spells casting on 3d6 dice. He's got Demonic Speed is my chosen spell to give 3d6 charge to a mounted unit, either Archaon or the Chaos Knights. And then Demonic Power on his War Scroll gives +1 to hit and wound to a Slaves to Darkness unit. So very strong on any of the 3 units, Archaon, the Knights, or the Chosen. Archaon himself, Binding Damnation was the chosen spell. He's got, that gives, it's a 12-inch range fight last spell, so you can cast it on an enemy, and they are striking last in combat. So lets you kind of choose matchups and play around things a little easier. And if you don't know about Archaon, he's 860 points. As you see, he's a big body on the objective. He's obviously massive base, massive model. He doesn't do 860 points worth of damage. I guess is the easiest way to talk about his output. Verandard at 600 points are going to do more damage turn to turn for sure. But he's a 25 wound body with a 5-up ward save, a 4-up spell ignore, and a bunch of other tools. If you're within 12 of him, units can't rally or use Inspiring Presence. He's got some sweet monstrous actions. Once per game, he can determine the next priority roll. So on a 4-up, you take the turn, or 1 to 3, your opponent takes the turn. Lets you, if you're usually do it in the bottom of the round, and it lets you kind of know if you're going to get the double or not, and you can kind of play accordingly. So definitely, if you're expecting Archaon to carry the army, he's not going to do it, but he'll free up the army to... He takes so much attention if you want him to, that it allows the other pieces in your army to do what they want to do. So, good question, Mario. Why Slaanesh marked on the Sorcerer Lord? So I originally went, when I tested this list actually at X Planet, just the little RTT first, I had my Chosen in Khorne, but my Sorcerer Lord was still Slaanesh then. It was literally just for the +1 to run, so it was easier for him to keep up with my other units and be in buff ranges for following turns with his spell. So that's the primary reason for Slaanesh. I decided after that first test weekend or test day to go Slaanesh with the Chosen. I wasn't too worried about losing the +1 to wound from Khorne, and Slaanesh with the banner, you still get +1 attack on the charge. So that was good, and it gave me the option, if I needed it, to run in charge with the Chosen. Now, that's a Slaanesh command ability to make a unit be able to charge in the charge phase, even if it ran. But that has to come from a hero, so... it has to specifically come from a Slaanesh hero, so the Chaos Sorcerer Lord is the one that would be issuing that consistently game to game. If I marked Archaon Slaanesh, he could issue that to them as well, but it's a good point to talk about. Archaon gets to choose his Chaos mark at the beginning of each battle. That's really good. The reason that's really good is the marks have varying effects. We'll talk about the impact in each of my games, because in my first 3 games, I used 3 different marks. So that was, yeah, very good. Looking at, so yeah, that was the reason for the Slaanesh mark on the Sorcerer Lord. Looking at the battle line, Corvus Cabal, staple unit in the new Battle Tome. 80-point unit, doesn't do much, but it deep strikes, so you can use it. Again, I'm a low unit. I only have 5 units in this army. It's very little. So board control was definitely a concern of mine. Having a deep striking unit helps a ton. If I could have fit 2, I'd have taken 2. And then they also have a pretty sweet rule where you cannot, if they're wholly within cover, you can't target that unit, so they're not visible. Great if they're also on an objective by chance, and can deep strike onto an objective and can't be shot off. Never really came up for me. It was more just about bodies on the board, but just a sweet rule for the times you need it. 10 Chaos Knights marked Nurgle are one of the best anvils in my opinion. Chaos Warriors are great too. Chaos Warriors have 10 more wounds. You'll save 20 points reinforcing the unit, and will be a similar tar pit. The thing about Chaos Knights that I really like is they are more proactive. Rather than just marching onto an objective, this unit can get up in the enemy's face, compounded with a 3d6 charge. And not only are they fast, they're actually, trade off for the 10 less wounds than the warriors. They, are run 2 damage on the charge, so they pack quite a punch. As Mario also points out, they are in Bounty Hunters alongside the Chosen, so that's going to 3 flat damage from the lances on the charge against, Galatian veterans. Again, this was the last hurrah of the old GHB, and we all know Bounty Hunters is super strong. Just to quickly answer your question, going forward, how do I change battalions in this list? I think I'd go 1-drop. If I was to take this exact list, I would probably just go 1-drop. There are some trade-offs. I don't necessarily. I actually really like being higher drop. I could have been 1-drop in this. I thought Bounty Hunters was more valuable. I think actually being 5 drops, I wasn't too bothered about. I don't mind being given first with this army. So yeah, those are I guess the main points. But Bounty Hunters never hurts, so you have, Battle Regiment never hurts, so you have those choices. I also, Dartron, similarly hate hate bounty hunters, super happy to see it go, but it's really strong. And if I was to play something like Fire Slayers or Night Haunt or Nurgle, they were all, it's super helpful there. I do want to circle back and say a big thank you, Lord Billy, for the support of our channel goal. That's a big generous donation towards getting some of the goats on the table, and we'll definitely have to name one of them Lord Billy. So thank you so much for the support. And also Jose for the 5 gifted subs. Really appreciate it. Great to get more people exposed to the channel membership and get access to all those extra battle reports. Then lastly, last unit in the army was my Chaos Chosen, and while they are last, they definitely often were the unit that carried this list and carried the army. They are insane damage output, 30 wounds on a 3-up save with 10 models, so reinforced once. Slaanesh Banner gave them +1 to run in charge, so with their War Scroll, that's +2 to charge base. Really good. No surprise there. The option to run and charge when needed, absolutely pivotal. Think it was 100% the right choice. No regrets taking that. Also in Bounty Hunters, so they go from 2 damage up to 3 damage against GVs, also doing mortal wounds on 6s. This unit can dish out a ton of damage. It can take a bunch of damage. Rallying on 5-ups. This unit was really the MVP, I would say, of my army, like throughout the weekend. So that is the army. Autumn Daming. I agree, Battle Regiment is going to be the auto pick battalion in the new GHB. I don't mind that the new battalions aren't as impactful as like Expert Hunters and Bounty Hunters. I think that's a good thing. But I wish some of the other battalions, like the core ones, were more compelling. I think they should, easy way to make them more compelling, let them use that ability, whether it's like the Vanguard one to auto run 6 or whatever. That should be, not restrict the normal use of those command abilities. So you can do it in conjunction, then those battalions actually get super interesting, in my opinion. But let's look at the games. So, showed this earlier. This was in the presence of idols. I was playing against a gentleman named Andrew, and it was firstly a blast to play against. Very nice guy. This was his first live event, like playing in person. He's played on TTS a bunch with his buddy that he was telling me about. But I think he said I was only the second person he's ever played AOS against, and his first like live in-person game, which was really cool. Awesome to have like a plethora of like players of all different experiences at LVO. Tournaments aren't just for people that have already been to a ton. You got to start somewhere. Big events like LVO are often like the best places because you just are exposed to so many people in the community, so many different kinds of armies and stuff like that. So yeah, it was very cool to see him out. And he had a Nurgle list. I didn't pull up the lists, would have been interesting, but basically he had 3x10 Plague Bearers. He had the Warband. He had 2 units of the Warband that shoots and spreads disease, Rotmire Creed, and then 2 of the Maggoth Lords, Bloab, and I don't remember the other one's name. It was Bloab and the one that does like decent combat damage. Coming into this one, was pretty happy with like this is a mission that I love. You pick 3 idols. I have 3 massive hammer units that are hard to take down and good at dealing damage. And here, Bounty Hunters. I was actually a lower drop than Andrew in this one, and I'm gonna try just to focus on like kind of the main beats of the thing. I'm not gonna go turn by turn. I don't want to bore you or be here all night talking about the games. But big things in this one, I outdropped Andrew. He said he's been playing with his one friend who plays Seraphon. So as we were talking throughout the game and afterwards, that a lot of the things that he had been considering and building towards were with Seraphon kind of in the back of his mind. Whereas as soon as this is the first time he's exposed to a different army, and it's an army that like cannot be more different than Seraphon, that's gonna like, rather than like chip your heroes down and whatnot, it's gonna get up in your face real quick and do a heck ton of damage. I gave Andrew first because he was not really threatening me in any way. It allowed me to set up for a potential double. Also know if I'm getting the double because the Eye of Shirian. So yeah, all told, it was a pretty quick game because I did win the double. Oh no, I didn't win the turn actually, but regardless, it was Andrew basically just had to kind of march forward, get on the objectives, which allowed me to get everything in combat. My 10 knights, 10 chosen. Archaon actually, first activation, first attack with Archaon. He lifted or put one of the big heroes. I just not blow up. Was it? What's up? Is it Festus or is Festus the little guy? I don't remember. But put one of the Magdath Lords in the sword. Very first combat of the tournament for me, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, Chosen went in. First activation, they did 40 damage to a unit of 10 Plague Bearers after the ward saves. So with the second activation, I split them between 2 other units and lifted both of those units as well. Knights lifted a unit of Plague Bearers. So after my turn at the bottom of 1, I think he had Blowab. His 1 unit of Rotmire Creed and the 3 little sorcerers, which was obviously a real bad spot to be in, and just was a showcase of how much damage this army can put out, because it is a lot. Ordots, that was the one. That's correct. So thank you, Lord V. In the end, again, Andrew did win priority, but it just devastating amount of damage. Literally, again, got everything into combat because this mission he just had to kind of march towards the center. I made the top left objective the proving ground, so I could deep strike my my warband, my Corvus Cabal there if I needed to. Also stopped him from running his unit of Rotmire Creed over there, which is what he would have wanted to do, I assumed. And yeah, again, just kind of funneled everything to the middle. You can find results of LVO on BCP if you have a subscription. And other than that, ask someone who does have a subscription. If you don't, to take screenshots. Might be posted other places, but I'm not sure. So yeah, that was a rough introduction, sadly, for Andrew to turn and play. Just an army that his build necessarily wasn't designed to or prepared for, on a mission that hugely favored me, especially with bounty hunters. It was a lot of damage. Round 2. Round 2 I played John. John was in the chat earlier, might still be here. But John was an absolute pleasure to play. We were talking a lot about Sylvaneth throughout, during and after the game, because I'm obviously a big Sylvaneth fan as well. This photo was actually taken during my movement phase at the top of 1. John outdropped me, gave me first, and yeah, you'll see, as you can see, I was pretty aggressive with Archaon. So I think it was the left objective that John activated. So let me. Okay, so this objective here was the one that John activated. I ended up deep striking my Corvus Cabal just towards the back of it. The Chosen are spread out here, just so on following turns I can either push this side or push here. Again, the terrain being hugely impactful to me. I would have loved this unit to be right there if like the Wildwoods or something there. I'd love to be on the terrain, but this really forced me to kind of, sit here in this awkward position, be able to flex either way. Because if on John's turn he came and hit this objective hard, killed my Torval Skullwall, I had to be able to answer it with something. Strategy here. So actually, in my first game, one thing I forgot to mention is I went Mark of Khorne with Archaon. That granted him +1 attack on the charge. The reason I chose that is I didn't, this mission, I didn't need the speed to, close ground with him, so I didn't need to go Slaanesh. And I did not, I was not too concerned about like the damage output in combat of this list. Obviously, Nurdle does a lot of mortals, but I didn't felt threatened, so I didn't need to feel like I needed to go Nurdle. So Khorne was the answer here, and just added to Archaon's damage. Potentially was the reason why I was able to roll 2 6s to wound. Back over here, John deployed 5 inches back from the line. We're 22 inches apart here. So that was 27 inches. I was deployed on the line, 27 inches between Archaon and, any of his closest units. And so in this one, I chose for Archaon to be Slaanesh. I spent, the command points to auto run 6. So Archaon goes from 14 to 20 inch movement. And then again, use the ability to allow him to charge in the hero phase. Sorry, not charge in the hero phase. Charge in the charge phase even if he ran. So I also cast Demonic Power on him for +1 hit and wound. Then I got Mystic Shield on him as well. And then the 3d6 charge. So 27 inches away, because John was 5 inches back, meant I had a 7-inch charge. I don't get to reroll it, because the way the run and charge command ability works, it's in the charge phase. But that meant with the 3d6 charge, I was still reliably getting in. I think I rolled on those 3 dice like 11 or something. So I got up in here. So this spot here, I wish I could, yeah, I'll do that. I tucked right up here into like between some Kurnoth and the his flies. The flies I knew were kind of in John's list. They were like kind of the best flexible, speedy combat unit. I mean, the biggest hammer for sure in John's army. But the thing that would really kind of, if I had to chase them around, it could be really tough for me. So Archaon was able to get into combat there. I think I only killed 3 of them, but just having Archaon in your face with all those buffs, put John in a position where he either had to like completely run away from Archaon or try and kill him over a double, and that, which would be a big decisive blow, and it's possible. I also, so that was turn 1. Archaon went in, killed 3 bugs, right in John's face. Because of how many like units obviously were at the back of the board, the bugs could have retreated and 1 unit could have teleported away in the wildwoods. But realistically, like, if John was just to try to avoid Archaon, he was already so close that I'm just gonna be hitting a unit every turn if he leaves me out of combat. So Archaon was kind of being, this is, potentially how he's best used, maybe, Archaon in this book, is just as a bully. He's not an insane amount of damage. Very reliable here on the 2s and 2s, or with +1 hit and wound. But not not insane output. Killing 3 bugs isn't the wildest thing that's ever happened. That was top of 1. John took turn, actually put quite a bit of damage onto Archaon. I think actually like 16 wounds ish after shooting. Lariel, I think, accounting for like 8 to 10 of those with her mortals, so she popped off. John brought a bug back with their abilities, so he was back up to 4. But this is the spicy moment. Archaon has one of the new monstrous actions is to auto slay a model if you roll over its wound characteristic. Could have gone for like one of the smaller, warband models for like to heal 1 or 2 wounds, but I felt Archaon actually was already like having taken, I think, 16 damage. That was more damage than I was expecting, more damage than he should have. I did finest hour him in John's turn. But again, just those mortals going through from Drycha was really big. So I went for the slay on the bugs. I needed a 6. I got super lucky. I rolled a 6, auto slayed one of the bugs, and then Archaon healed the 5 wounds that the bug has. So Archaon went from 16 wounds and like reliably dead on the double, potentially kill, like if with some luck could theoretically still go down this turn, but definitely reliably on the double. But healing those wounds was like absolutely backbreaking. Archaon, I don't think took too much more damage in combat, ended up lifting the remaining 3 Revenant Seekers, and then I was fortunate enough to win priority. And you can see from like the position here that the Chosen were in, I did auto run them 6 and then use the run and charge command ability in the following turn. And by the end of the turn, these Chosen, start of turn 2, they were here. End of turn 2, they were literally on the back edge of the board after like, a big move, big charge, double pile in. They took out, I think, 2 units of Kurnoth Hunters and then the Warsong Revenant. Maybe that was with help of Archaon, but just insane amount of output coming out of that unit. And this was like everything that could go right for Slaves definitely went right in this one. Made for another quick game. John chiming in says he didn't feel like Archaon could be ignored. And with the other units a turn away, yeah, it felt you had to deal with him. And that's the pressure. And well, Archaon, again, isn't the most amount of damage in the game. He's not, doing the same amount of damage as 900 points of Erendhard, nor even close. It's not something you can ignore for sure. Yeah, especially on the 2s and 2s for most of its profiles with demonic power. So this was, another, bold, aggressive game for Slaves, and I feel like is the best way to, in my games with Archaon, that's just what made the most sense, how to play it. You can see the flexibility here. I was able to choose the Slash Mark with Archaon. Obviously with 5 units, there is the potential for my army to be very challenged in terms of holding and scoring objectives, especially with multiple objectives, and obviously some limitations in that way. But being able to put your opponent on the back foot means you're messing up their game plan. And what is your potential weakness, as John alluded to, his mobility, mobility and kind of flexibility being a big strength of Sylvaneth. He had to kind of stay in the position and try and throw everything into Archaon to take him down. So it kind of, Archaon's kind of a piece that has really messes with your opponent's game plan, which is honestly just something I was kind of finding out game to game. And yeah, he was pretty good. And yeah, exactly like John said, it buys time for the rest of the army to kind of get up there, do their thing. Now on some missions, if John had like deployed on the line and we were only 18 inches apart, amazing thing is Archaon could just move 14, be outside 4 for a 4-inch charge, and something like the Chaos Knights, I could put the 3d6 charge on them, and they only need an 8-inch charge. With 3d6, that's very reliable. And potentially, I'm getting the Knights and Archaon both in that turn. But it's, with the distance here, I threw it all the buffs on Archaon and whipped him in. What's up, Jean-Francois? Great job also at LVO. Shout out to John. Also, John, I think I looking back, I think I saw you went 4-1 overall on the weekend. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I saw that. That's an amazing result. So huge shout out there. Sylvaneth has some tough matchups, I do feel, in the meta. So taking 4 wins at LVO is a great accomplishment. Then looking at game 3, I'm playing Odermatt Tribes. Actually, next to the table that John and I were playing at was a mirror match between like a Stonehorn, Kragnos, Odermatt Tribes list. There were actually 2 of them, and they were it was a mirror match between the 2 players. They had mentioned they knew the channel, so they gave them some dice and stuff, and the winner of that mirror match just happened to be my next opponent. So I played Dan. He had Kragnos, the Stonehorn General, and then 2 Thunder Tusks on Stonehorn, and then, or no, Thunder Tusk. So what's the guys? The 2 dudes. Thunder Tusk is the other mount. It wasn't a Thunder Tusk for a Stonehorn. That would be hilarious. I don't remember what those guys are called, but the ones with the 2 dudes that aren't a hero riding the Thunder Tusks. And then he had 2 of just the cavalry dudes in the back. I forget what they're called. Mournfang. Yeah, so those are the Mournfang. Stonehorn Beast Rider. Yeah. Anyways, I'm not good with names. Of unit names of armies I don't play. Anyways, Dan was low drops here, so this was actually the mission that I was most concerned about in the pack. There are, 8 objectives. What's it called? I cannot think of the name of it. It's just evading me at the moment. But 8 objectives, definitely a concern for me, because again, I'm low bodies. The best way for me to play this list or this mission is to be aggressive. Thankfully, Dan was in the same position where he's low unit count in like a few powerful bodies, and the best thing for him was to silk steal nests. Thanks, Jean-Francois. So he actually ended up taking first. I didn't love my deployment to this one. Move my camera real quick. Cover up the dice. No. So, as I said, I didn't love my deployment in here. And this is actually, there were this and another game notably, I wasn't happy with my deployment. I like being 5 drops actually, because it lets me counter deploy. In this situation, he had deployed Kragnos back here behind the Maw Pot, and then put the Stonehorn General right here, the other Stonehorn Beast Rider over here, and then 1 over here. And then 2 Mournfang on this objective. So Dan was in a position where he had choice of first. And I had put Archaon down here, I think, as my second drop. But before I knew where everything but Kragnos was going. And then Dan obviously deployed his general right in front of Archaon. And the other Stonehorn over here. So I'm like, okay. That Stonehorn, I know, these Stonehorns move fast. And then have a 3d6 charge with Kragnos. And that's pretty scary. They can obviously do a ton of damage. So as soon as I saw that, I instantly regretted putting Archaon down early. I should have put something like, so my Torvus Cabal are always my first drop because they're just in the sky for deep striking. And I felt like I probably wanted to put, see this terrain piece right here was the garrisonable one. I actually deployed my Chosen inside there. Maybe that should have been my second deployment. Dan was 2 drops, so after that I would have seen all of his the rest of his armies. Dan, similarly, 1 defender here. So you'll see the garrisonable piece up here, the other one down here. Those are the impassable ones, then the garrisonable ones here and here. The 4 across the middle are the 4 pieces of terrain that get in the way the least, so that Dan had a free reign to walk across the board. Not a gripe with Dan by any means. I would do the opposite in his situation. If I had 1 defender, I would have put the impassable ones all in the middle to get in the way of all his Stonehorns and try and clog up the board. This goes to show, like, it's hugely impactful. The Stonehorns basically are walking across the board unimpeded. hugely favorable for Dan, hugely detrimental for me. Again, too much power in the attacker defender role with these terrain rules. Yes, this was a new Slaves Battle Tome. Thank you. So Dan took first turn, being that he was like deployed to get into Archaon if he wanted to. And I'm like, okay, this could be trouble. I, see this as soon as he takes first. I'm like, okay, finest hour on Archaon. I put with the rest of my deployment, I put my knights over on the side here, right on the line. So if he had have given me first, I could have gone in, whipped across the board, charged those Mournfang, and taking that objective, and then Dan's in a position where I'm kind of splitting his force. So I was okay being given first, but yeah, so that was a little bit scary. There's a prayer that the one Stonehorn knows with whatever artifact or trait that allows them to do that, for +3 move, and you can use it on Krynos, giving Krynos 13 inches of movement. He failed the prayer, and which meant it was like a 16-inch charge for Krynos. Could have been a 13, which is with 3d6 much more achievable. I redeployed 1 inch, so maybe I made it a 14. Or it went from 12 to 13, I think, actually. Or 13 to 14, whatever. Or it would have been that if he was moving the +3. Didn't get it, so it was like 15, 16 inches or something. Didn't make it with Krynos, which I'm obviously was sweating about, because the Impact Mortals could have been extremely fresh into Archaon, and again, that's like why I should have waited on Archaon's deployment. He was able to set up some of the stuff to like alpha Archaon with my redeploy and the failure of the prayer. I got a little lucky in terms of Archaon not taking 2 Stonehorns and Krynos. And in this match, knowing so that in this one against Ironjaws, there's these big threats. I'm worried about Archaon dying, and he's definitely got the damage output. So I marked Archaon Nurgle, so using the third of the 3 really relevant marks, so that he's -1 to wound in combat. That really changes the numbers on the Stonehorns. In combination with finest hour, Dan failed his roar, so Archaon was able to use all the defense as well. I think Archaon only took like 11 or 12 damage in that first combat phase at the top of 1, which was not what Dan was looking for. Obviously Krynos was the main hope to get him in, but then just the -1 to wound in conjunction with being like +2 to save, 5 up ward, they weren't doing enough to Archaon, and it set me up in a pretty good position, actually. All things told, I again had the Chosen here. I had rolled the +1 to charge buff for the Chosen, so they were +3 to charge with the Slanesh mark, and their War Scroll ability, whether it's the drummer or musician. So I was able to pop them out of the train here at the bottom of 1, make a charge into the Stonehorn, with Archaon staying in combat. They collectively took down the 1 Stonehorn. Archaon made the big one, I think, fight last. So the general had fight last on him. And then maybe I'm wrong, I don't remember. But either way, I just don't think he did much in combat that round. And yeah, I think he did fight last. Anyways, the Chosen, Archaon couldn't finish off the first Stonehorn, so the Chosen had to try to pile around him. This fun story here. I put 9 Chosen into this one guy, finishing him off. It's the one Archaon had attacked on turn 1 and turn 2 too, but failed to take him down by himself. So the Chosen completely ripped through him. I would have put more into the other one, but with pile in, I could only get 1 in range around the back here. That's where I was hoping to clear him with Archaon, so I could do the full pile in into this one, and then the second activation into him as well. All told, so the Chosen lifted this first one after Archaon didn't finish him off, and one of the 10 Chosen went into the general, though. Demonic Power hitting on 2s and 2s. mortals on 6s, the 1 chosen plus 1 attack, up to 4 attacks on the charge. I rolled 2 6s on his attack, so that's 2 mortals in addition. I then wounded with all 4 of his dice, and Dan failed all 4 of his saves. So that was 10 damage with the mortals, going on to the ward saves for his general. Just insane. Dan rolled horrible, rolled 1 5-up ward on those 10 dice. So literally 1 out of 10 chosen did 9 damage to a Stonehorn general. Leaving it very easy for the unit to finish him off with their second activation, which that was the time to pop it. Popping that then actually also allows me to close this gap here. So Trinos couldn't come into Archaon if I lost the turn. And I did actually, excuse me, I looked at the future. I was losing the turn there, so that's why another reason to use the double activation was to close that gap, limit Trinos' ability to come in. Trinos then on top of 2 had to come around this way to try to get into Archaon. I was more spread out. I redeployed to even make it a bigger wall around the chosen, or sorry, with the chosen around Archaon. And then Trinos went to the chosen. I think they lifted that he and Trinos and this other Stonehorn combined to kill 9 out of 10 chosen, which was huge. So nearly killed my chosen, which again are my biggest hammer in this army. Also mentioning on my turn 1, these knights went across here, charged, killed these 2 Mournfang, taking this objective. Also let me put 1 body on this objective over here. With the loss of priority, it meant I actually was, taking that objective as well on Dan's turn 2. So denying, I think it meant I denied hold more. No, I thought I already would have, but just taking objectives to, for obvious reasons. I had deep struck my Corvus Cabal back here, kind of behind this terrain piece, just on the back of the top left objective. If it was either Trinos, you have to come deal with these guys if you want to take this objective back, or obviously you want to get into combat, which is what Dan did on turn 2. Meaning that, okay, not only do I have this objective secure, but then we're in walking distance of this other one on my turn 2. All in, after the way round 1 went, Dan was like, okay, right, he knew the writing was on the wall, or he said it. Lost so much output, so much of his army, and then the following turn, bottom of round 2 on my turn, he finally soured Trinos, so I elected not to go into him, put everything into the other Stonehorn with the Beast Riders or whatever, and took it out, leaving Trinos as the only thing left on the board. I had 7 of 8 objectives, and basically it was a 4. From there it was just Dan was just scraping for points in battle tactics with Trinos, and actually achieved, I think, 4 out of his 5 tactics. So he did eye for an eye round 3 with Trinos. Didn't have one, or failed one for round 4. That was the long shot. But round 5, after Trinos was down, he was able to do the older one. Just nothing. You can't have anything in combat, which is nice and it's achievable. Yeah. So Dan was again third awesome opponent to play against. I had nothing but great experiences at LVO, and this was a match that the flexibility of Archaon, I think, was pivotal for. You compare him to Verandar damage, and Verandar definitely do more damage, but Archaon, just like the flexibility of the mark, Verandar can't change their mark, so it's so good. I just think of something like Verandar. If they were to do this, be in the same position, they couldn't have Finest Howard. They don't have the ward save to everything. they can't choose their mark unless they're already, to be flexible. So it's like Archaon is definitely a huge liability in some ways of being like one model in a, one location on the battlefield with not an insane amount of damage, but just very flexible. And the Nurdle mark here probably, won me the game. Because if Archaon went down turn 1, I think it's definitely a much harder game, no doubt. So that was my round 3 against Dan and his Odormaw Tribes Beastclaw Raiders. Round 4 is into Tzeentch. Caleb. Caleb is an awesome dude. This is the second time I played him over the years. Absolute pleasure. Love running into him at events. One of the best players around, and one of the best people around as well, which is, you say a lot of there's a lot of nice things to be said about Caleb, and a ton of the top competitive players are also really good people that want to have clean, fun games together, and always enjoy to play people like to play Caleb or those kind of people who care about sportsmanship and ensuring we all have a fun time. Lord Vlad, I did not go for the Tzeentch mark here, so this is actually probably my most disappointing game. Well, definitely my most disappointing game, for obvious reasons. When you lose a game, it's not as fun as when you win a game. I don't think there's any surprise there. So what I'm trying to do is actually, so I need to do this real quick. So I threw this image into Photoshop because I want to talk about a couple things real quick. So this is after my movement phase in turn 1. So, yeah, Caleb and Screw are also both hilarious. But yeah, great dudes for sure. This was the one objective mission, Realmstone Cache. I did not want to play Tzeentch. I didn't feel great about this matchup. If I had to play Tzeentch on any mission, Realmstone Cache would probably have been the best one. Couple things to note. Caleb won Defender. So he put the 2 impassable terrain pieces, creating a big lane, which blocks all my stuff in one position. It's not as easy for me to spread out to other objectives when they come down, wherever they come down. So super favorable for him, and not so favorable for me. I mentioned this earlier, but again, I would have loved to put the objectives or the big terrain pieces there and there to impede his strategy rather than a little more rather than mine. In Tzeentch, Caleb, the design of Caleb's list is to kill his little sorcerer, or get him killed turn 1 so that the incarnate's wild and can run and charge. Caleb gave me first because you can't weather a double from Slaves too much. Yeah, this was so playing against Caleb. So in deployment though, I had to be wary of the fact that he could have taken first, killed that hero and gotten, moved 18 inches with the incarnate and then charged and basically gotten into me anywhere. So again, I knew Caleb was out dropping me. I think he was 4 drops. I did guess if I recall correctly. I was 5, so I didn't have the flexibility of only putting down that 1 unit and then getting to see all of his deployment. And again, I made a deployment error here, just like the previous game. After the previous one, I'm like, okay, I had it in my head, I'm like, I shouldn't put Archaon down as my second drop after the Corvus Cabal, because in that matchup he was flexible. But that obviously was situational to that matchup. And this matchup, I, again, just lack of experience with the army. I'm like, okay, I'll put my sorcerer down as my second drop, because I generally know I'm gonna deploy him outside of 30. That's easy. I can do that, and that's an easy deployment I don't have to worry too much about. The other consideration, though, was where everything else was. So I put, you can't see it here because of this photo angle, but behind here, my Sorcerer Lord is basically back down there, outside of Unbind range, so that I'm free casting turn 1. I had my Chaos Knights were over here in a big bubble on the left. Sorry, photo over there. So Chaos Knights were on the left side, because that Incarnate, if it could have tagged my 3 units, I think Caleb would have taken first turn, or there was the option to take first turn, and he could tie up my whole army for literally 2 rounds potentially, and keep me off the objective, take a huge advantage of scoring, where that would be game breaking for me, because I knew Tzeentch late game is very strong, and I needed to deny points, as many points as I could, as much as I could, early in the game. So I had the Knights over on this left flank. I had Archaon on the right flank, basically the right edge of the objective box, and then the Chosen screening out like 3 inches from Archaon, so that, with potentially also a redeploy, if the Incarnate was to whip across towards Archaon, he's only getting to the Chosen and not Archaon. So again, not tagging hopefully more than 1 unit. I also made a gap of, I think it was 12 inches between those 2 units, so that like Caleb, and then Caleb, such a good guy, such a gentleman, was as I like to be, above board about like what the possibilities are and the combinations and the tricks of his army. Like it's clear, like just reminding that like, yeah, I can summon the spell portal and then charge the spell portal. So he, because of things like that, and again, I've played the Incarnate before, so I'm familiar with it, but just making note of like what being a nice opponent means is like when you are forthright of not trying to gotcha your opponent. It's such an enjoyable experience, win or lose, right? And that's all you can hope for, because we're all gonna win and lose games, no matter how much we'd all like to only win. So being a good person is the number one thing. Anyways, if he had to put an endless spell in the middle of my army, he could literally charge that, not pile in, and if I was like within 11 inches, he could have tagged units on 3 inches either side of him. So I left a big gap in the middle. So all smart deployment stuff. The error, though, again, was setting up my Sorcerer Lord first, or not having thought out this counter deployment to the Incarnate threat at the top of my deployment, because I had deployed my Sorcerer Lord right in the middle. Archaon was wholly within 18, but only the Chosen were wholly within 12. It let me through some, I think the Chosen were wholly within 12. But what that meant is I couldn't put Demonic Speed on Archaon or the Chaos Knights. Huge deployment blunder, backbreaking for me. Big mistake, and those are the, like 9 times out of 10, it might not be a game losing mistake, and I don't think it was here actually. It could have been a game winning if I had a position better. But in a this was top 38 players, that were on 3-0, undefeated in round 4. So when you're playing players as as skilled and experienced as Caleb, and those with similar ability or experience, it's often the player who knows their army better that's going to win, because they'll make fewer mistakes, right? Or stuff like that, and that little mistake is an example of just inexperience on my behalf with my army. And yeah, it definitely came back to bite me, or definitely bit me at the top of one again. Yeah. What it meant is I couldn't put the 3d6 charge on Archaon or the Knights because it's only wholly within 12. Which led me to make Archaon, after being given first, it made me go with Slanesh Mark for Archaon so that I could do the auto run 6, run, get into the zone, all that kind of thing. Charge turn 1, get into his lines, kill his 2 units of acolytes. So that was a mistake. I also cast Demonic Power, and I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know if I feared maybe him trying to avoid Archaon and go into my other stuff, but I put Demonic Power on the Chosen. Let's get rid of all these markers. Put Demonic Power on the Chosen rather than Archaon, which was just a dumb mistake. I don't know what I was thinking, because like whipping Archaon in like I did it as Sylvaneth, the smart, the important thing would be to throw Demonic Power on Archaon. So that was a little mistake. I don't think would have changed had a huge impact. But you can see just little combat things. So choosing Slash Mark, great and all. The main thing is that it meant I wasn't choosing the Nurdle Mark. I could have gone Zinch. Actually, Lord V mentions the Spellador is only a 6-up. Archaon already has a 4-up. 6-up isn't really providing a ton of value, I don't feel. So the Nurdle Mark would have been better here, I think, for frustrating the Incarnate. Also his Zangor are a pretty hitty unit. And it just means Archaon's extra reliable. You're already, having to worry about unbinds and then a Spellador to push damage through on him with magic. And then his ward save and ward reflect already felt pretty good against magic. So being Nurdle here definitely would have been better. Just again, it still hurts me. It's still fresh wounds making those mistakes. All in Archaon. I'm just trying to talk about strategy here of like thought process here. So I hope I'm not getting too deep into like what my thoughts and decisions were. I'm not going to talk about the whole game as you've seen, but just like the learnings that I had and the important aspects. So Archaon went in, cleared 1.5 of the units of acolytes because he whiffed a bit in combat because he didn't have +1 hidden wound on him by mistake. Didn't really matter. It was just like 3 or 4 acolytes surviving and didn't do anything the rest of the game, or they died, I think, the following turn. But on Caleb's turn, so this is bottom of 2, Archaon was basically there. Incarnate came in about here, just staying outside of 3 of the knights, and Caleb chose not to tag them, potentially so that he would be free if he won priority. The not enlightened. The Zangor came in and charged this side, and yeah, that's all the main things. Archaon was taking a bunch of damage, just chipped through. Basically, Caleb was like, okay, I'm throwing everything into Archaon. I need to kill him. If I don't, it's a real bad spot. And it's not reliable, but playing for the double, it's like, okay, over 2 turns, I have to get Archaon down. Maybe I get lucky. But he had to deal with him, right? So, yeah. Well, spoiler alert. Getting chip damage through on Archaon, nothing surprising. Archaon was getting a bunch of spell ignores, but still taking some damage. Like, there's so many Zinch spells that do damage, and a little bit of chip shooting. He did summon. He was the chicken summoning sub-faction, so he did summon the Lord of Change turn 1 with more shooting, so a little more chip damage. The big thing is though, Caleb cast the Purple Sun. Archaon went for the ignore, failed the 4-up. Okay. It's not the end of the world. Only Purple Sun, -1 rend. I already was thinking he has the Zinch Head to eat and then the spell to, so I'm not taking additional rend in combat. But, because I am Finest Hour here. Didn't get my Mystic Shield off. Caleb rolls the 1 on Purple Sun. Archaon's taking 6 plus D6 mortal wounds. Rolls a 5. Archaon's taking 11 mortal wounds. Okay. A good spike here would help. I don't think I made a single ward save to deny any of that damage. I think I literally took all 11 there, actually. Or maybe it was a 9 or something, but Archaon went from like, okay, you're not killing Archaon this turn, to like, okay, you're got a good chance to kill Archaon this turn. I did eat the Purple Sun with the Zinch Head, so I wasn't taking the additional rend. Caleb has a bunch of minus save stacking spells. So he was trying to, stack all those negatives to, make it easier to push damage through on Archaon. But with the spell ignores and all that, again, I, was in a pretty good position. I was super comfortable, I think, until the Purple Sun. I don't know that that's the case, Valor's Heart, that you roll for both abilities. We just rolled for it all as one. Don't think it's really, it's only advantageous to roll for both because I lost. If I had won the roll, so I think that you just roll for all of it. It's all one war scroll, so in my mind, just roll it all. Oh, it's in the FAQ. Okay, that's good to know. Well, I didn't. It's fine. I'm not too fussed about that. But regardless, it's a 4-up, easy to fail it again. Would have loved to not fail it, but it's really just the rolling the 1 on top of that. Yeah, so that hurt. The Zandor went in, attacked first, so that obviously wasn't losing their output. The Incarnate can always fight because it's going to stick around to the end of the turn. And I think he roared Archaon, but again, I was still Finest Houred. So the Zandor attacked first, and actually in combat, Caleb and I talked about this afterwards. I'm like, okay, what am I going to attack with Archaon? It was either the Zandor, which were again right here. Caleb had shifted his army over here to be defensively hidden behind this wall. Zandor were right here. The Acolytes were mostly dead. And so I still was pretty confident that Archaon was going to live. Oh God, this is so heartbreaking to talk about. Still fairly confident that Archaon was going to live. Zandor did a bit of damage. Actually, then so Archaon had the choice, okay, do I go into the Incarnate, take it down a level, or do I go into the Zandor, clear one of his storing units, and just that's a unit off the board, that's a screen, a combat, all that's right. So actually remove a unit, whereas the Incarnate's still sticking around. And what's going to put me in a better position? Okay, it's the pressure's on already to win priority, or otherwise I'm for sure losing Archaon on the turn. So if I don't win priority, I'm in a bad spot. Okay, it's something I accept. It's part of being given first. Against a castle army, if you can't punch through the castle fast enough, you're potentially going down, or your army's getting taken down. So it's okay, if I win the turn and have taken the Incarnate down a level, I can dispel the Umbral Spell Portal so that he can't eat it in my turn. He's on level 1, so then I can put the Knights in and finish off the Incarnate. Great. And so that's that play. The other one is okay, I could go kill the Zandor and But then what are the Chosen doing the following turn? They're not, super fast unless I run in charge, which, I have the potential to, but those Zandor are kind of right there. And it's an easy kill for the Chosen, right? So I felt I'm like, if I kill the Zandor, it's leaving the Chosen with nothing to do. I went for the Incarnate. I did take it down a level. The heartbreaking thing though, after attacking with Archaon is, oh my gosh, it's so many little things. He attacked with the Acolytes. I think there were 4 or 6 left in combat at that point. And they actually did, like, that one staff thing went through and did 2 damage to Archaon, failed the wards, failed the save. And then it's just 2 more damage on Archaon. Then the Incarnate attacks, kills Archaon, the exact wound. So all my plans at that point out the window. This is not good. Again, if I had the Nurdle mark on me, Archaon's a lot harder to take down, not taking as much damage in combat. He lives. If I put Demonic Power on him, he's doing more damage. He's killing that unit of Acolytes. He's not taking that extra 2 damage. He lives. If I deploy in range of my Knights, get 3d6 charge on them, charge them into the Incarnate turn 1 to tank him, they're living. Or I'm in a great position. So all these little things that, like, any one of these that I either chose differently, didn't make a mistake, all that, Archaon rolling Caleb rolling the 1, Archaon going down, all these little things, like, one by one aren't losing me the game, or detrimentally, like, crippling on their own, but compounded. It's like an example again of a player more experienced with these armies that isn't making these little mistakes is taking the edge because of my mistakes. And now, in hindsight, so I ended up winning priority. Archaon was down though, which meant the Incarnate was back up to level 2. Okay, not good. At that point, I had noticed with this charge of the Zandor that there was like a slight gap where I could fit like one, enough for a Chosen base to fit through them and this wall. I noticed that in deployment, at the start of my hero phase, and this is maybe another little mistake. I can't say that it's an army mistake, but just not, an awareness or not thinking too much about what I would do with the next turn if I won priority, so much as, not setting up for future turns. Because those Zandor, well, there was a gap there. I was like, 8 inches away, even with +2 to charge. I was probably more than that. I was probably 9 or 10 inches away. I felt like that wasn't a too much of a gamble. I think if I was like rolled like a 10 or something, I could have like snuck back behind this objective. Anyways, what I saw with that little gap was, okay, if I charge behind these Zandor, clear these Zandor, I'm actually in range to use my second activation, pile in, get into at least the Odroid, potentially Odroid and Kairos, and take them both down. I'm like, okay, that potentially wins me the game there, or is extremely crippling. But I didn't feel confident. Again, 9-10 inches away maybe with the Enlightened, or from the Zandor with my Chosen. So I was like, okay, I don't want to give him a redeploy. But I'm too far to comfortably make that charge. If I rolled at 11 or 12, or knew I was going to, I'm golden and I don't have to move to give him the redeploy. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna move my Chosen up first into this little gap, and then Enlightened are here, Acolytes are there, Incarnate's there. And to move my Chosen in a way, like going towards the center there. And I marked this unit of Acolytes my target for gaining momentum. And then I had denied actually any primary points for objectives because Caleb couldn't take the objective from me. Caleb did achieve his battle tactic, which was eye for an eye, because he took Archaon down. He had failed to do enough damage with his spells to my Sorcerer Lord, which is just luck on my, bad or good or bad luck, however you want to look at it. So I made, anyways, the Acolytes my gaining momentum target, hoping that, with the intention to make, appear that I'm trying to send the Chosen in there and, give that, Caleb, make him potentially want to redeploy those Acolytes away to avoid, to try and deny the battle tactic. Caleb being, not, I was hoping he didn't see this little gap so that I can then move closer and charge him behind. Caleb, being the smart player that he is, also saw what I saw and tried to avoid bringing attention to. Redeployed, moved 3 inches in here, moved 3 inches, or whatever his deploy was. Tried to block off the Acolytes, but also blocked this gap to the wall. So I'm like, okay, not good. But it was because I had moved up and outside of 3, he could close off the gap to the wall, but he wasn't able to move forward towards me to push me back. Meaning I was in a place, if I could clear those Zangor with my Knights, which then charged into the center bubble, putting, a model or 2 into the Zangor, the Acolytes, which was enough to finish them off. I put 5 models, which is all I could get in range, into the Zangor to blow them up, which would have let my Chosen pile in 3 inches and then use their double pile in to still get into the Odroid and Kairos. I don't know. I think Caleb Finest Howard used Destiny Dice to make some saves on the Zangor. And then there were, I think, 6 or 8 saves left from the spears, all doing 3 damage a pop because of bounty hunters. Caleb was like, oh, this is where I need 4 6s. And Caleb rolled 4 6s and kept 3 or 4 Zangor alive, I think it was 3 Zangor alive, which two of those hits going through would have lifted the rest of the unit. But that, keeping those, those 3 living, so you've rolled, say it's dice, that happens, right? It's not like that's crazy outlandish. It was a little lucky for sure, but it prevented then my Chosen from doing anything valuable. They finished off the Zangor, all that. Rest of the game, I know I've been talking about this one a lot, but there was a lot that I learned from it, or a lot of mistakes that I made. All in, I was denying points. I was up 8-4 after round 2. Caleb was getting his battle tactics, but not scoring any primary. Round 3, the objectives came down in this corner, the top left and bottom right corner. My Chosen were here, auto ran them 6 back to try and hold this one. Deep struck my Corvus Cabal over to this, the top left one. Storing my hold 1-2 more for the turn. But I was at a point now where I was running out of battle tactics. I ended up just I could have done ones to kill a unit or hold more or barge through enemy lines or desecrate. But because the zones were so small, there wasn't a good desecrate target. It was only the center one, which I couldn't deep strike to. So there was no good desecrate, no good battle tactics. So I actually had to make the decision. Either I'd go for the battle tactics and maybe try to kill some stuff, which needs a big charge, but leaves this objective completely open, or I go for the objectives and try to hold on for the win. That was the play I went for. Go for the objectives. So Chosen went to the back right one, or the bottom right one. Corvus Cabal went and scored this one for a turn, gave me hold more, gave me 3 points. And from there, Caleb was starting to score. He scored 5 points in turn 3. Because he was able to just get enough. I didn't have all my Chosen on there, so he was able to get a monster on there for 5 points or 5 bodies. And from there, it's like the final turns. Caleb stored 5, but then I denied hold 2 and hold more the round 4 and 5. So we only stored 3 and 3. In round 3, I stored 3, 3, and then 1, putting us on primary points 15 to 15. And then I'm like, okay. I thought he had spent all his destiny dice, so he didn't have his grand strategy anymore. He just had them separated. He just had them in a set position to make sure he reserved them for the end of the game. Not that I could have done anything about that. I don't feel comfortable with the battle tactics playing slaves. Grand strategies. I don't feel like there's a good one. But it's taken what's theirs, and I obviously was not having more units in his territory, so I was losing my grand strategy. Caleb's with the destiny dice was, automatic or guaranteed, so long as he wanted it to be. So Caleb pulled ahead 18 to 15 with grand strategy, and that was a painful one. That was definitely within reach. Great game against Caleb. Always a pleasure, like I said, playing him, but to narrowly lose out on that one definitely hurt. So that was that for my game 4. Hope that wasn't too in-depth there, guys. Obviously, I was talking about that one for longer than like everything else combined, but there was a lot to talk about in that game. But yeah, Lord V, he may have won the minor or anything, but obviously it's like, I'm still trying to store as many points as I can. I'm trying to do everything I can. So, putting myself in the best position I can. But yeah, so that was disappointing to say the least. I think it was definitely like a winnable game. Why is this picture? This would have been so much easier. I don't know why I cut off the bottom earlier. But yeah, so that was that game. My game 5, I don't actually have a picture of, so I apologize. So we're just gonna jump back to me real quick. Game 5 was against Tom Dwan. He was playing Ideneth Deepkin. The mission was Nidus Paths. This was obviously an army I'm very, very familiar with, so I know strengths and weaknesses. I know how to play against it. I feel like it was a pretty straightforward kind of how this one went. Tom gave me first, so I went in turn 1, whipped Archaon forward with the buffs, whipped my knights forward, got them both into combat, put them in his face, and basically tried to make him deal with them. Didn't do much damage because of the turtle plus cover plus all out defense, and Archaon failing his roar. So I didn't kill a lot. Tied up both his units of sharks. He had two units of 2, a turtle, the Archaon King, some Aether Wings, and then 2 units of 10 Reavers. But me putting all that stuff in his face, his turn 1, bottom of 1, he tried to put everything then into the retreated out the 1 units of sharks with Archaon, tried to avoid him, tried to put the turtle and 2 sharks into killing my knights, and brought them down to 2 models left. So did a good job. Or maybe I had more than that. Yeah, I think I had maybe 4 left or something. Reavers came in, also did their shooting at the knights, so he's putting everything he could into taking those knights down. At that point, so Archaon, he was just trying to avoid Archaon, hope for the double. I won the priority there. Archaon went in, killed his king, so that is a huge damage threat I didn't have to worry about, also leaving Tom super thin on command points. Retreated the knights out of combat, set them up to rally at the start of Tom's turn, rallied a couple back. He still, sends in the turtle and the other sharks to try and kill the knights. And that was basically the game over there, was the turtle and sharks, trying to take the knights down. backing out and rallying them now that they were, you know, wounded. Archaon, you know, going in and killing one unit at a time. It was, you know, the king, and then the first unit of sharks, and then, you know, the second unit of sharks and turtle. And the deep striking reavers, Tom made, when he deep struck them, there was 2 units of 10, one in front, and alongside them was the soul render on the objective. Put myself in a position with the chosen on turn 2 to make an 8-inch charge with my chosen, me needing a 6 on the dice. He redeployed one of the units of reavers away, but I still just needed that 6 to get into the soul render, soul scryer, which would allow me to then use my second activation, or even the first, depending on the charge length, to also split into some of the reavers and take them out. Didn't make the charge, so they were sitting out. He got a curse on them because I was within 9 inches, and then doubled 2 into 3, and actually brought those chosen down to 2. Over the course of 2 turns of shooting and everything, and sharks going in combat. Actually, on that turn 2, sharks did a bunch of damage, but they killed the sharks in return. Tom won priority into 3. I was out of curse range this time, and I rallied back to, I think, 3 or 4 chosen. The reavers took them back down to 2, but I had my rally had blocked off his route to barge through enemy lines, so he had to charge into combat and try and finish them off in combat. I think all told, I had 2 left after all his attacked first with 2 units reavers and the soul strider. Those 2 chosen, then activated into 1 unit of reavers and bounty hunters, eliminated 10 models, used the piling attack again, or the fight twice at the end of the phase, then killed the other unit of 10 reavers, denying the battle tactic. Killing 20 reavers with 2 models was pretty wild. But they obviously dish out the damage. I had, the buffs sitting on them from the previous turn, so they were, doing super reliable 2s and 2s, mortals on 6s. 3 damage because of bounty hunters, so pretty wild there. And that's there were the 2 battles on the left flank was the Chosen kind of facing off against the Reavers, and the right flank was Archaon and the Knights facing off against, the Sharks, Canaan, Turtle, and kind of just wore them down on both sides in the end. So, and that's actually, I mentioned it to Tom, but that's kind of one of the reasons I wasn't super keen on taking Deepkin myself, is because I felt like there would be a lot of slaves, and slaves was not a strong matchup for Deepkin. High armor saves, fast enough to kind of dictate matchups, could be trouble for Deepkin, and that kind of prove the point to myself, at least, of like, okay, yeah, this is what I feared, was as the Deepkin player was definitely a valid fear. But that was everything. So those are my games. Ended 4-1. Again, said it earlier, 4-1. Great accomplishment at LVO. That was my goal going in with Archaon, was like, Archaon hasn't been talked about super favorably with the new battle tome because of his points cost. So I kind of felt like I was like going in with like a subpar list to some degree. I was like, so 4-1 I'll be happy with. After playing the games and kind of getting a better feel for the army, it's like, as I said, 5-0 I think was definitely achievable. It's not going to be every time, like but I do think it was achievable. So in hindsight, and with how close that game with Caleb was, and some cleaning up some mistakes on my part, you never know who I would have played round 5 if I had not lost. But I think 5-0 was not out of the realm of possibility with the list. So that was a good learning, but sour to be so close to it and not make it as well. What else? So I think just kind of want to talk about a couple little things. So that's just in reflection. looking back over it, I'm gonna pull up my list again. It was, I saw it mentioned in the chat. How does my list change to the new GHB? I don't think you have to play into the GC meta if you have good battle tactics. Like, what it maybe opens up one more battle tactic or two that are like moderately achievable and not that good anyways. So I don't think I have to worry about adding any more GCs to this army. I think you could play this army and it still be very successful. Like, it definitely is not as straightforward as other Slaves builds, I would think, with Verandard and more straightforward damage and, maybe more reliable tools. But it does have a level of tech in it that those armies don't have, giving it more flexibility maybe. So honestly, I can't say that there's anything like that needs to be changed in this list. You could explore if you wanted to. If there was something I was going to replace, I would maybe like play around with something other than the Knights. They weren't bad by any means. They were good. They did a good job kind of pinning and harassing. Were they critical to my games? I don't know. I don't think so. I think maybe a unit of Verandard, like 3 Verandard at 290 points, frees up 170 points that I can maybe put into, another 2 units of, of Warband, like another Corvus Cabal and an Untamed Beast or something, or another Sorcerer Lord. So I think there is some flexibility in terms of directions you could go. Nurgle Knights are definitely a solid piece. 10 Nurgle Knights are like so tough and annoying to deal with. But again, I don't think they were mandatory. And there were games like in my Sylvaneth game with John, they didn't do anything. They didn't need to, but with Archaon, I already have a big pinning piece having 2 maybe felt a little redundant, so wasn't absolutely needed. Gabriel, great meeting you at LVO as well. No stress about being a little under the influence. I've dealt with Ridge at many events, so I'm well practiced. And compared to Ridge, nobody's really that drunk. So, is there, with the closer objectives, would I think about chasing the Chosen to Undivided? So I played the Chosen in Undivided in Legion of the First Prince, which there's like some compounding benefits within that sub-faction. I can't remember what, is it just they get to like roll 2 dice, or they get to re-roll for the Eye of the Gods table? I don't remember. You'll have to remind me what the roll 2 dice. Okay, yeah. So I think it's no. To be honest, I wouldn't. I think because they're a move 5 unit, it still gives them so much flexibility. You think of something like the mission where you burn objectives rather than activate them. So what's this? Jaws of Galet or something like that? Teeth of Galet. They're only rolling on the Eye of the Gods at the beginning of the game, as opposed to something like in Legion of the First Prince. So I don't think there is as much value in it, because again, in something like Jaws of Galet, if they're in the middle of an objective, it lets them reliably get to a different objective. They're not meant as my first wave piece, or to be, they're kind of my follow-up often. So I do really like them. If I was to look at another mark and to play them a little differently, I would put them in Nurgle. -1 to move and reducing rend by 1 makes them just incredibly tanky. So I think those, to me, those are the two standouts. Corn, I think, drops off now that you don't have access to the Bloodstoker anymore, which is a good thing. But I think Slaanesh with +1 attack on the charge, +1 to run and charge, the option to run and charge when needed, I think those are all extremely strong. And then Nurdle is extremely strong as well, just a different tool. So I think if you want them to, go sit on an objective and absorb a hit, Nurdle. If you want them to be a flexible counterpunch piece, I would go Slaanesh. Because with the banner, you still get +1 attack on the charge. Brand new mate says there's a bladder plan. You can't contest objectives if an opponent's GC is on it. So having a GC to shut off scoring is helpful. Yes, that's true. And there are a couple missions. Like I said, you could fit another GC in this list if you wanted to reduce the knights. I don't think it's necessary, because I think if you go this kind of a list is probably going to kill what's on an objective if it can get into it with 1 or 2 units. It's got a lot of damage output. It has the speed to threaten back objectives, so even on that 4 objective mission, or some of those, I can threaten the home objectives as well as the outside corner ones, and you're not going to deny all 3 objectives to me. I can still get my Sorcerer Lord on there. Obviously, going to put Tunnel Master on it. I'm often being given first turn, or if I do go 1-drop, Battle Regiment, taking first turn is great, or having the choice. If so it bears more testing for sure. I haven't played this list with the new GHB, so I can't say that, but it would be, those are potential liabilities. Yeah, that's, I guess, all there is to it. I do think the GC meta is going to be a bit underwhelming in a good way. It's not going to be as impactful as the GV meta was last book. So I think if there's a hero on the objective surrounded by his battle line, okay, I'm not shooting that hero anyways, right? On the mission, he's holding the objective. Okay, yeah, it's going to deny me a turn of storing. Me having more GCs isn't stopping that, because if he's there first, I can't take the objective from him without killing that hero. So having low GCs isn't negative. And I just have to kill the unit, and then if I can't do it that turn, I have to kill the other unit the following turn. GCs are way more important if the event doesn't allow book tactics. Yeah, I don't see many. Honestly, I don't see many events that I'm going to that would do that. I think that is, especially look at Beast of Chaos and Gits just came out. They both have a lot of good battle tactics. So it's I get that battle tactics aren't perfectly balanced, but what armies are super losing out or can't play the game anymore because of their battle tactics or lack thereof? I'm sure there are a couple, but I think it's the minority now, that especially off the back of 2 new battle tomes, where to me, I think it does not make sense to ever ban book battle tactics. That's just my opinion. Others are welcome to think differently. Tiziano asks, if I put 3 Varangard instead of Knights, do I still want to be in Host of the Everchosen? Yeah, I think so. I don't think it hurts. I like my chosen battle line. If I don't need my chosen battle line, maybe. Rallying them on 5s is nice. I mean, rallying my Knights on 5s was nice too. With Master of Magic, I don't really want to make my Vanguard General. I think there are some other ways. It's options, honestly. I think there are 3 really good sub-factions in Slaves right now. So I think there's an argument, to be honest, for Everchosen. There's not... me list building right now with slaves, I build a list and I put it in Host the Everchosen. I put it in Kabbalists, and I put it in Knights of the Empty Throne. I almost like go through those three and like, okay, what sub-faction makes the most sense and tweak things a little bit. So that, this is my, I think Host the Everchosen is still really good. It's as viable, even if you don't, even if I drop the Knights, there's still enough value in it. If I'm running 2 Sorcerer Lords, maybe I look at Kabbalists rather than Knights of the Empty Throne. I ran Kabbalists on the channel last week for our channel members, so hope you guys enjoyed that one. That was a lot of fun to play, and kind of in the vein of stuff that I'm thinking about and testing. Yeah, slaves can definitely be hard to shift. They suffer to high rend though, and they suffer against high saves. Or sorry, low saves. Good saves. So like high rend, you know, Night Haunt, rend stacking, you know, witches with potentially rend 3, against Zinch, where you have an incarnate purple sun, and 2 other spells that make you -1 to save. Put something that's normally rend 1, rend 2 to rend 3, rend 4, rend 5. Like, very scary. So there are things that can try to punch through the armor. You know, mortal wounds even to stuff like the Chosen. And that's where that 5 of Rally helps you kind of weather the shooting or magic into them. Yeah, sorry, just reading through the comments. So if you have any other questions, I'll just kind of pop through the chat as we wrap things up. Out of 40 lists for an event, I've seen 1 sharpshooter battalion. Yeah, I don't think people are taking sharpshooter and singles. Realistically, I don't. I don't think it's important enough to shoot heroes yet. And I don't think there are some important missions where it is nice to, but the game overall, like, you don't have to shoot the heroes. Again, you often want to kill the unit first anyways, because the unit's what's going to do damage or be the threat, all that, or holding the objective on 11 or 12 missions. So I don't think sharpshooters is going to, like you said, Joe, I don't think it's going to be super common. Maybe in a teams format, it becomes bigger. You know, having that kind of counterplay, because it's, you set yourself up for certain matchups a little bit more. But that's about it. Kuhal says only army completely ruined is Sons of Bahamut, which I understand that, and I do have a little sympathy, not a lot, based on the first year of 3.0 with Sons, but I do understand that if you're a big Sons fan, and that is disappointing. But you know, we've had other books that have been, you know, in the bin for GHB or multiple years, aka Gits. So I don't think we should change the, you know, entire game for all the rest of the armies just because one army is, you know, hurt more than the others. And I sorry if that doesn't feel sympathetic. I'm, you know, talking from someone who, you know, is fortunate enough to like have multiple armies, but I can totally empathize with those who like have one army, you know, they're a Sons of Bahamut player and that's their favorite army and they can't really compete this edition. That I definitely understand the bad feels there. So I think the answer is write better battle tactics, generic ones. I don't like the GC things are cool, but even if you have GC heroes, honestly 3 of those battle tactics are still not very good, not very achievable. So I don't know what Sons of Bahamut sub-faction battle tactics are like. I can understand on some missions they're a struggle because of that. There's, you know, definitely elements that'll be tough for Sons. Yeah, so we'll see if anybody can still perform super well with them. There were a couple 4-1s at LVO with them, obviously old Battletome or old GHB, but Shoutouts to AOS Coach, who I met down at LVO, and he took the Suns to 4-1. So they're still fighting. They still are a good army that can hold objectives and smash things pretty well. Do I think taking the 7 GC is worth the tactics flexibility? A turning maneuver you can do with a single GC. That there is one or two other ones, if I recall correctly, that you need multiple for. But to also answer Jeffrey's question, I do think slaves have good enough battle tactics where they don't need them. They have 4 to 5 that are reliable or like achievable game to game. One of them was charged 3 slaves units. It was actually a little hard with my list because I only had 3 slaves units that charged. So that one, kill a unit within 12 of an objective, or clear all units within 12 of an objective. Take one of your ensorcelled banners from wholly outside of your enemy's deployment into their deployment. And ones that kill a priest or a totem, that's a pretty good one also. Not that's gonna happen every game. And there's one more that roll on Eye of the Gods for one of your heroes. If you have the spell for that, that's a pretty easy one as well. Those are all solid ones I think slaves have. Where I think slaves does struggle, they have good battle tactics, but I think slaves struggles with their grand strategy, and that is probably the most concerning thing for me in building slaves lists, is like, and actually for my list in particular, if I don't smash my opponent, now I did in maybe 3 out of 5 of my games, or even 4, I think I achieved my grand strategy in all but the Tzeentch game. So it's not one that you're going to achieve reliably if you're losing the game. And so my list, especially with only 5 units, it was especially hard to do. And that's take what's theirs. So that's another reason maybe to consider splitting up those Chaos Knights into like a Vanguard, another unit of Corvus Cabal, and a something else. Lots of things to consider. Kual says Fire Slayers can clear them pretty fast. Talking about slaves, you are correct. Though they do have some ward saves against mortals, Fire Slaves can do mortals. And they do have pretty good armor, so that's a mission. Well, we saw it actually. We did play that one year. And I was on the Fire Slayers, that's why I wasn't thinking of that. So yeah, we did see Fire Slayers, chew through them. I think there are some other options. Ryan wasn't playing the most ideal slaves list, so I would love to try that matchup again sometime. How do I suggest Deepkin deal with high save armies like Slaves to Darkness? It is not as bad as with Bounty Hunters, but still one of our most difficult archetypes. You gotta dance around. You gotta spread them out and try and deal with them unit by unit. So looking at, my list or most of the slaves lists have 3 big units, whether it's Barandard, Chosen, and Knights, or Knights, Chosen, and Warriors, or some combination of 3 units is kind of going to be very common, where you want to kind of deal with them one at a time and take them down and then move on to the next one. Deepkin doesn't really want to be hit back ever. So trying to, get in and get your high rend stuff into those, I think is going to be the best way. That said, high rend is very important. So Smash King is going to be a big one, being on rend 3. Turtle, I think, is going to be really important, being potentially on rend 3 as well with Nautilar. Also Roaring, that's potentially equivalent to rend 4 on those guys. Well, you can't do both with the Turtle unless you have to. So those are some options. Reavers, I think, still are good. efficient, as sharks are with Rent 2 is not bad. Thralls, I think maybe are suffering the most because against the save stacking, but yeah, it's like even with Thralls and Reavers, it's like they're both volume of attacks are very, like the volume of attacks are very high. So I found often just only looking for those 1s and 2s was enough. I mean, maybe you look at the Eidolon of the Sea to do like the minus D3 save spell, stack more negatives to save, but that's kind of gambly a bit. Eels have Rent 2, which is good. Mortal Wounds, which is okay, because it's unreliable and only once per game. But you just gotta like, I think the big one is trying to split the army up into pieces, force them to spread out by using, small chaff MSU units to take objectives so that they have to then put something bigger to take it, and you can try and spread them out that way. That's the best kind of Deepkin advice I have. Darktron, as you say, all the Tzeentch is really good with all their long range spells at taking out GCs. 100%. It's definitely will get some time in the sun, Eric. I have no doubt about that. I hope you guys watched today's game, or if you haven't had a chance, go watch it later. And we'll have another one coming out later this week, where Carl takes the gits out, and it is educational. It is very cool. Sweet games. I think I will go back to LVO. Joe, I'm 100% planning to go back to LVO next year. I told Cass, my wife, that she has to come with me next year, because she'll have such a good time there as well, even if she's not playing. So, highly recommend. Yep, Brandon, you're right. The banner tactic we talked about for Saves the Darkness has to be within 3 of another unit. But when you have Corvus Cabal, I found that one pretty easy to engineer. I would often deep strike it with that tactic in mind for the following turn. So something you have to kind of set up or plan for, but again, being so aggro or having the potential to be super aggro, it isn't abnormal that one's possible. Follow the path to glory. Duran Strat is your fave. Yeah, that's a turning into a demon prince every turn, I believe. That one's a lot of fun. I have a build that eventually, after I get this core slave stuff painted up, I'm going to be working on a Legion of the First Prince build. Just for fun, and I will definitely take that Duran strategy if I'm thinking the correct one. Because just for fun, like there's just some cool tech and stuff in there, so definitely on board. Yeah, guys, I think that's everything. This recap of LVO was about an hour longer than I expected it to be, so apologize if it dragged on too long. I hope there was some good insight into talking about both the event and pack and what I learned through my games. So again, yeah, hope you enjoyed this little insight into my time at LVO. If you have the chance, it's definitely an event I recommend going to. It's the wrap up of the ITC season, so if you care about that at all, it's super fun to be there. Whether or not you care about that, it's super fun to be there. Opie Mock, I know you're a big Tzeentch fan. Thank you for the super chat or super thanks. And me and Caleb have had some conversations about trying to find a way to get him up for a battle report at some time. So fingers crossed that that's possible later in the year. But Caleb's a good buddy. Love running into him at events, and definitely would love to have him on the channel and get to showcase his Mad Tzeentch skills. But guys, that does wrap it up for tonight. I think that's you've heard me talk enough, so I hope you enjoyed this little video though. I would love to do some more streaming of different types of stuff, you know, destruction videos and all that. I enjoy it. It's fun to talk to you guys. Either way, hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you soon in another video. Have a good night. Brandon, thank you for the support. Love you, buddy. Anyways, guys, later. Bye.